Well, I know there's a lot going on right now at noon on Wanderlust on Friday, so thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it. You know, when Jeff, one of the founders of Wanderlust, asked me to speak, it was really an honor because you know I've talked a lot about social enterprise in different forums and mostly very business-like forums. So to be here, you know, with the consciousness and the spirituality that's happening here, it really made me think about how to talk about this whole thing, both the project that I'm going to talk to you about, as well as social enterprise in general. You know, most importantly, really, this is our community. My wife, Allison, here in the middle, who I can't quite see under these lights, has been teaching yoga for over 20 years. I met her in a yoga class, taking her yoga class. And some of you may know that are here that over 10 years ago I started a regional yoga magazine, one of my first true forays into social enterprise. It was at that time called Yoga in the Rockies, and it subsequently turned into Elephant Journal. And Waylon Lewis has done an amazing job of that. I think he's speaking on Sunday. So come see Crazy Waylon talk, and he's done amazing things and over 10 years with Elephant Journal and continues to push the edge with that online magazine. But you know, it's so interesting to start weaving all of this together for me, because this community and this path, I mean, really, for my wife and I and our two sons, we have a 9 and 5-year-old boys. Between life and our yoga and our kids and our work in the world, it really has been that edge that we play on. And one of the main journeys on our path has been tantric yoga, the teachings of Rod Stryker, if you know Rod, and so many others that have been bringing through some amazing teachings just over these last 10 years. Things, so much more information, so much more rich teachings that really weave into almost everything we do. It's almost at a certain point no way to get around it. When our kids are acting out or doing something crazy, and you have to find that balance and that edge of being a good parent and yet finding your boundary and helping them find their boundary. And so, you know, I really want to, what came through over the last few weeks, thinking about what I was going to talk about today, because it really brought up a lot for me, was this edge, you know, in Tantra and much of our yoga. And I've listened to my wife talk about it in her yoga classes ever since I met her, is in the pose, is finding that edge. And for me, it's a little bit more in work. I don't get to do asana as much as I did, you know, when we first met or when I was a little younger, and just the responsibilities of getting up every day and getting those kids out the door and getting to work and spending, you know, a lot of time on projects that are very meaningful for me. But it's become on a daily basis that I have to do my yoga through my work and finding that passion and that purpose and that edge through everything I'm doing. So I want to talk about that a little bit. I took just a couple notes. I'm not going to read to you this session, but you know, for this group, I really built a basic premise around social enterprise. I'm going to have to read it because I haven't memorized it. And it's that our work can be the canvas on which the creative force of the universe moving with and through us can come into form and function to positively impact our spiritual path, our families, our communities, and ultimately the world. You know, I'm not an artist, I'm not a musician. I wish I was at times, but really that canvas for me is work, is social enterprise, and finding projects and companies and certainly people within that can really allow what's inside of me to come through in the most productive way. And you know, I'll just be honest. I mean, and that edge we're talking about, which we're really going to explore through a little process. I'm gonna do something I haven't done before. We'll see how it goes. But we're going to do a little practice along with this lecture, which I don't generally like. I like being in teams. I like being in groups. I like, you know, panels are fun. Sitting here with the lights and everyone kind of back in there is a little bit different, because I think the concepts of social enterprise and evolutionary leadership, as I put up there, is really about working in that space together and feeding off of each other and reflecting each other's highest purpose and being able to speak transparently about what's holding us back. So I hope we can do a little bit of that today, even though we're kind of spread out in a large room. Maybe at some point you guys will come up and we can form a little bit of circle. But so I'm going to start differently than I would ever start in any kind of other conference, especially with a lot of business suits in the room. But I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And we're going to go through a little visualization, and we're going to explore an edge here around this particular project that we're working on that I'm going to speak to here in a few minutes. So go ahead and just find your seat here. I know you've been doing a lot of classes. Maybe you're a little tired. It's lunchtime. And we're actually going to visualize some things around food, so this is going to be interesting. Hopefully you guys have all eaten. But think back. Think way back to when you were a child and some of your first smells and memories around food, or smells you had coming from your kitchen. Maybe it was your mom's lasagna or your grandma's apple pie. Whatever it was, just remember that smell. Take that in. And now remember how it made you feel. Really drop into that in your belly. Maybe it made you feel safe. Maybe it makes you feel safe now. Satiated. Excited as a kid. You get those smells coming out of the kitchen. You get excited. I know my boys do. Now you can start to sense that the visualization we're doing is starting to have a physiological response, right? You can start to feel it in your stomach, in your mouth, maybe salivary response. Your brain is telling you your body is getting ready to eat. Something good is going to happen here. Now open your eyes and we're going to add some pictures. If you could look over here at the screen. Let's up that a little bit, right? So now we're going to bring in some visual. Some soup, tomato soup. It's got quite a rich smell to it. Some bread. I don't think that's gluten-free, so I can't eat it. Some baked kale. Roast chicken. Top it off with a little ice cream. So food, right? We create memories around food. We often plan our lives around food. And certainly we create community through food and around food. So the kitchen restaurants in Boulder, it's part of this whole setup here. And I'm not here to plug the kitchen. Part of the social enterprise is from the kitchen restaurants. We have 4 restaurants in Boulder and Denver. We serve over 10,000 people a week. We're nationally recognized farm-to-table cuisine, and have really had a mission from day one to create community through food. From the beginning, we supported local school gardens through the Grow Foundation mostly, which is a wonderful local organization in Boulder, Colorado, that does a lot of the school garden creation and programming. We put chefs in schools, we took kids to the farms, we brought kids to the restaurants, and it was a really wonderful way to connect community through food, particularly in Boulder and now in Denver. But as we got deeper into this, and actually through a very edgy experience for one of the co-founders of the restaurants, Kimball Musk, who broke his neck three years ago, was paralyzed left, and really had his own epiphany, was the realization that we need to do more. As he sat in a bed with a halo for 3 months, and we were next door neighbors and had gotten to know each other through community and through our kids. And he has 2 boys, I have 2 boys, and so we lived right next to each other. And as he went through this horrific situation of his, and we were having these conversations, wow, what's next? What do you do? I mean, you've done amazing things, and if any of you know some of the work of Kimball and Elon Musk previous to the kitchen work or alongside the work of the kitchen restaurants, they've done little things like PayPal and Tesla and Solar City and SpaceX and all these really leading edge companies, particularly in clean technology and just some amazing, what would you almost consider social enterprises. But we recognized that something needed to be done, more than just menus that really addressed, getting kids to eat healthier at the restaurants, or tattoos, vegetable tattoos, and stickers and things like that. We realized we had a big problem, a really big problem. And we sat and talked about this and said, what can we do? What can we do? And here's the edge, right? So you feel where we started with food, thinking about it, visualizing it, seeing it, starting to have that response in ourselves. But then there's a different situation happening for a lot of people in the world. Certainly all over the world, food security and food issues. But even in our own country, we've got 50 million people a day going hungry. We've got 65% of our population either overweight or obese. So we sat with this and we talked about this, and we really knew and particularly Kimball and the work from the kitchen restaurants, knew that more had to be done. So, and just to put it in perspective, let's just roll through, and maybe Karina, you can help. Let's look at 1995. We're looking pretty green here. We've got some states up in the 14 to 17%, but we're doing okay in 1995. But then let's start rocking through the years here. Things start to change. Start to see some of the darker colors here. Getting up into 25%, 30%. Yeah, 35, 40%. Now we got 2010. 46%. Now it's saying 46% of adult Americans are obese. Wow, so we've got some amazing things happening here, right? We've got local, fresh, sustainable, organic produce happening in many communities across the country. I mean, the kitchen was kind of a leader in Colorado, in the Boulder, Denver area, but you see this everywhere. I mean, oftentimes when you travel, you can find amazing food. But on the other hand, and I've been spending some time the last 3 years in some other areas like South Central Chicago, or South Chicago or South Central LA, or some parts of Boston and New York, and even in Colorado. This is just my experience, so I know it's everywhere. But we have this amazing thing happening between local organic food, almost a food revolution, and then a population, again, 50 million that aren't eating enough calories, and yet we have, or they're empty calories, I should say. I'm sorry, so 50 million people a day going hungry, and 60 to 65% overweight or obese. So I'm just setting this all up, and I really want you guys to feel into this, because this is the edge that I'm talking about, and this is what I think I've experienced as I really dug into this presentation and the passion and the purpose around this project that I'm going to talk more about is why do this? Why take what I know and spend so much time and energy on a project, and it's a nonprofit, and do all this stuff? Well, it's that edge, and it's really riding that razor's edge almost daily. And I got some of my coworkers up here in the front row, that have been a part of this project almost from day one. And sometimes we just scratch our head, because it's a lot to deal with, this problem, as well as just how you bring that through a particular project. So what we decided to do is create a true social enterprise, a 501c3 philanthropic arm of the kitchen restaurants called the Kitchen Community. And we took all this information we had over the years, and we started looking at the data around school gardens and what we had learned from school gardens, and so just using that edge to say, okay, what can we do here? What's possible? And how can we, as a small restaurant group in Boulder, Denver, do something on a national scale? So the idea of leveraging our information, our impact investment experience, our social entrepreneurship, and doing something big. And what we came up with through this process, and that edge, and working together as teams, and and saying, what's the design? What's the research? What's the process? What do the projects look like? We came up with, okay, so some of the key data was that school gardens do have huge impact on doubling, things like doubling the fruit and vegetable consumption for kids that get to experience lesson plans and part of their school day in school gardens, as well as test scores in some instances even going up. So really starting to say, okay, we could have academic impact, we could have impact on intake of fruits and vegetables through the concept of a school garden, and yet our experience had been that school gardens, as wonderful as they are, and amazing projects all over this country, we want to do something even more, something that was, from a built environment, really scalable and relatively affordable given the constraints at many school sites across the country where there is no green space. I mean, where we're working in the highest free and reduced schools in the country where there may not even be a patch of green grass. So what we came up with was the concept of what's called the learning garden. And the learning garden came from, again, a lot of the data and the research around experiential and imaginative play, kind of what's coming forth right now in terms of revitalizing schoolyards, schools as community centers. And we created with Jen Lewin Design Studios in Boulder these curvilinear beds. There's only 3 shapes, but they can be put into thousands of different configurations. And these beds with art elements and a shade sail and benches and stones and at-grade planters, they really create an outdoor living classroom. Because we wanted to create something that was built to last. I mean, school gardens come and go. Oftentimes we see them over in the corner of a schoolyard. They're behind a fence. The kids have to be walked out there during a classroom setting, and they get to experience a school garden. Again, that's all wonderful, but we wanted to break down some of those barriers, and we wanted to bring it right into the focal point of the schoolyard. So where there's a playground, where there might be some other things happening out there, we wanted to put it smack dab in the middle. So it had to be built to withstand a lot of that intense schoolyard experience. So once we had created it, then we had to look at, well, how do you scale it? We're talking about some pretty tough areas, as I said, that just don't have hardly any space to put that. This was our first one that was built at Schmidt Elementary down in southwest Denver, and it had space available. They had almost a 3-acre pea gravel moonscape of a schoolyard, which as we looked at it first, we were like, it looks like more of a prison than it does a school. And this is the case in many of the places that we go. And yet they were getting through DPS, Denver Public Schools, and a bond initiative, they were all getting what were called learning landscapes, these really amazing revitalized schoolyards, the whole thing. Some of them include school gardens, community gardens, urban farms. So we had the space available on this one to play with. It was kind of our beta. Since then, since this first one, we've done 100 learning gardens, mostly in Colorado, a lot we'll have 100 by the end of this year. We have 50 now, we'll have 100 by the end of this year in Chicago, and then a number in the Los Angeles area as well. So again, the concept fits in any schoolyard, fully integrated drip system, so that oftentimes when you've got a school garden, it's hard to get water to it. So we actually try to get it to integrate with the school irrigation system, so that helps it obviously be more sustainable in those times of the year when it's not getting watered. And then most importantly, it's created by the community in just a few hours. So once the school has said we want one, then we take them through a pretty rigorous application and qualification process. We get to this point where they get to build it. And it's really a community raising environment where the teachers, the parents, the students, sometimes we have a corporate sponsor, everyone will come together, and after we've built the pad and we've created the basic structure, they can come in and they can design this thing in literally just a few hours, fill it with soil, plant it, and then basically take ownership of it. And we have back-end follow-up, and we have different kinds of ways to support their gardens. We have garden coordinators in different cities that help the schools, but we really, in the end, want them to own it, maintain it, and bring it and make it a part of their culture at the school. And not just like a traditional garden that they're going to tend, water, harvest, and maintain. This is right next to the play. You see it right there. The tetherball is right there. The playground equipment is right there. We want them to be just experiencing it on a daily basis. We feel like just the built environment in and of itself can be a catalyst for sometimes widespread and systemic change. And you see that in Leeds building and different types of green building, and you see that it can change behavior. So through this, and through this whole process, we now have kind of come to the place as an organization where we see the opportunity of doing thousands of these, tens of thousands of these. It's a donor-driven model right now, and so we are, as a social enterprise, truly a nonprofit, 501c3, but we have from day one always wanted to start bridging into being more of a sustainable enterprise. And we have some earned revenue. We sell to boys and girls clubs or maybe a private school where we don't have donor dollars to go in because it's not got the higher poverty levels which it requires to get the donor dollars to flow. But now that we've got this process and that we've got this product and we've got a need out there because we've already defined the fact that we desperately need to connect kids to real food, which is our mission is simply connecting kids to real food. We have to start looking at how do we scale this? How do we make it easy on these communities to receive it? And it's not an easy thing. I mean, in the neighborhoods that we're going into, it sometimes look more like a war zone. So to take their time and their energy and hopefully their inspiration and get that to translate into something that at many of these schools, once it gets built in that day, I mean, you've got principals and teachers, literally weeping at the fact that they've got this living thing in oftentimes just complete concrete kinds of landscapes. So we feel very fortunate to have been able to come this far, this fast as an organization. We're just over 2 years old. To have the and this is partly, so let's take what we've talked about of that edge, and let's kind of expand on it a little bit. So we had a product, if you will, with the restaurants. We saw a need out there in the world. We took what we knew about it and we brought resources to bear, and then we took it to a more scalable approach. And I think you can do that with with almost anything, right? So I mean, here we are at Wanderlust, and we've got all of these amazing products around us, whether it's a new juice drink or it's these amazing shoes we saw that are made from all recycled content. Everyone here is well, number one, they're good people. This is the community with which we're playing in, and that's why we've chosen to be here. But what I always wonder about is what's the creative tension that drives people to do their business or bring their offering out into the world through a project, through a product, through a business. And I think it's something we're all interested in. I mean, we're all entrepreneurial. We're all wanting to bring not just our life force into the world, but our gifts through oftentimes material form. So when we start thinking about this, for me, and that's where I really got in this setting, is how do we address that on a daily basis? What do we wake up with that inspires us? And even before our feet hit the ground, like what's driving us in that new day? And for me, it's how can I bring my gifts to the world? And sometimes it's incredibly frustrating, because again, there's so much other stuff that can feel like it's getting in the way. And again, whether that's the kids that need a lot of attention, or relationship that takes work, or anything, the problems that get in our way, the need to take care of our bodies and our minds and be healthy and get all that in. But then really, what's our offering? And I thought it'd be interesting to just share with you guys, through the 10, 15 years of being part of this community, what's kind of stuck for me. And then I'd love to kind of turn the energy around a little bit and see if we can kind of think about this as a group and maybe share in a little bit of what I call these evolutionary leadership practices that we can experience together. This was kind of what I was talking about before, the scalable approach. Why do social enterprise? I think if you go back one, for me, this little girl wouldn't let go. This is a South Central school in LA. They did have a little bit of green space behind there, and they said, please, we want to just keep that green space. We don't want to lose that. Can you build a garden over here on the asphalt, which is what we typically do in schools that don't have any green spaces. But this is why I do what I do. When you go to these schools and these kids they're so grateful, tears from administrators, parents just blown away that will spend this much time, energy, and resources to bring this to their community. It's just really phenomenal. So when I get to that edge of what am I doing, and it's really intense and it's a lot of work, I kind of come back to this and say that's it. That's what drives it for me. So if you go down a little bit, and that, again, this is South Chicago, and this is a pretty rough school. Where are we at? Was that Miles Davis, Peter? Yeah. That's Miles Davis. So gunshots for you, Jamie, there? Close right there. So Jamie working on this garden, and gunshots down the street. At first thought it was fireworks, right? And it wasn't. That's what these kids are living in. And for our teams to be out there in those neighborhoods, it's amazing. It's just life transforming for us to be in those situations and to be invited into these communities to do this work. And at the end of the day, when you've got kids taking home bags of fresh vegetables that'll not only impact themselves but their family, that's really what makes it worth it. So this practice, right? Social enterprise and tantric yoga as an example, because that's a main part of my path and my family's path. And I love Rod Stryker, so I'm going to pitch him a little bit in his book, The Four Desires, right? Like, if you don't have this, you got to get it, because it translates into everything. So let's think about social enterprise in a different way, and let's think about it in terms of our Dharma, right? What's our Dharma? Dharma is our longing for purpose. It's fulfilling your potential, right? How you contribute to the world and support the larger good. I mean, everyone here is already kind of doing that in a way, or we're already on that path. The other desires, let's just touch on them real quick. Artha is the material means required to fulfill that. Kama is the longing for pleasure along the way. I was just in a Shiva Ray class. That was awesome. A lot of pleasure along the way there. That was good. And moksha, the longing for true freedom and the awareness that we're all seeking. And again, given the fact that many of the things that are happening in our world create a tension, right? I've worked in clean technology and renewable energy. Wow, talk about a tension there. We got some big problems with energy. We got big problems with how we're creating energy and the pollution around that. So it's what drove me to work in that field. It wasn't just, hey, clean technology is cool. Let's go, do that as a job. Let's do it as a purpose. Like the tension is we got a big problem here. We got potential solutions. We need to work together to create something greater than the sum of the parts, and something that's going to be a game changer, not just for us, but for certainly, as the Native Americans say, the next 7 generations. If we don't figure that out, we're not leaving a very good legacy, and we're not fulfilling our purpose. So in all these different sectors, it can be in food, it can be in energy, it could be in healthcare. it doesn't matter. You're always going to find that creative tension. And if you can create your canvas on that, and you can really start to work into your desires and your passion and your purpose, and you can say, what are my gifts that I want to bring forth to the world, and what's the canvas on which I'm working, then what's the sector which within that is going towards, then you can start to say, okay, I align my purpose, I align my passion with my work, whether it's for-profit or non-profit. It can be any number of different vehicles. Now we've got B Corps emerging. Now we've got different kinds of LLC types of structures coming on that can be for-purpose organizations. And we can talk a little bit about structure if you want, but it's like I'm really thinking here about how our Dharma comes through onto that canvas and into form and function, into the projects, into the businesses, and into the things which we want to create change in the world. That it's ultimately going to affect us. I mean, I hate to say it, Rod says it too. I mean, we think about ourselves and our path and our karma and our soul's purpose. But if we're true to that, what are we doing? We're finding our true north, right? So if we're truly finding our true north in all that we do, it's just going to amplify out to our friends, our family, our community, and the world. And I, for a long time, went from the place of the world and was always thinking about, God, this is fucked up, and there's so much problems in the world, and I got to do something, and I got to be out there, and I got to create change because, man, I'm having kids, and we got to do something quick. But it crushed me. I'll be very honest. The weight of the world on my shoulders caused me physical, mental, emotional grief over time because I wasn't taking it through from the truth of my core and bringing it out through all I do in the most productive, say, almost conscious way. It was a burden rather than coming from purpose. And so I hope business gives us the vehicle and the structure. And so many times we poo-poo the big guys in business, and there's lots of problems in the systems that have been created over particularly the last decades. And it was a very masculine approach to doing business and charging that hill and conquering the world and making money. And there's a lot of problems there. Don't get me wrong. But I also see that as we wake up and we're parts of these systems, we're going to get the whole things to change. But on a very fundamental level, if we use business and the structures that are at our disposal, because we're not going to change that very quick. We're not going to get the IRS and the states to change the structures with which. I mean, just even I've been a part of the whole B Corp push. What a challenge it is to just say from a fundamental level, like a C Corp or, well, generally a C Corp or an S Corp, that you don't have the fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders to make money first. That's all the B Corp is trying to do is say, no, wait a minute. It's not money first. There's these other things happening. There's people, planet, profits. There's triple bottom lines. There's multiple bottom lines. There's all these other things happening. So we can use these structures that are at our disposal. We can create a for-profit. We can create a non-profit. We can create some hybrid of the two and earn revenue within a non-profit. But ultimately, it's a place where our purpose and our passion comes through for ourselves all the way through to the greater good. And for me, just a couple things I'll kind of end with here that have stuck with me over the years. And the first one on the next slide is what to do before my feet hit the ground. Because where I'm at in life with 5- and 9-year-old boys and a big project on my plate is, man, you better I hit the ground running. And sometimes it's with my 5-year-old, like periscope up, like boop, 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 boop. Where's daddy? Jump on. I'm like, oh God. The nervous system and everything is just like supercharged. And here we go. We're in the day. There's no going and sitting and, like I used to do when I was younger, and I'm just going to melt into the day and I'm not there right now. Maybe I'll be there when I'm 50. Who was right before me? Sarah Gottfried. Oh, God bless her. She was amazing. Talking about the cortisol. I need to do everything she said because my cortisol is freaking, right? And especially with 2 young boys. It's like, it's hard to manage cortisol when it's like constantly like something happening all the time, and you're getting hurt, and you're getting this, and this is that, right? And so staying true, finding that edge, keeping myself on track, getting that purpose, moving in the right direction. This has saved me. And honestly, it's funny. I'm going to show you this. I love Yoga Journal. I've gotten it for years. Don't always read it cover to cover. But this was in a Yoga Journal. I don't know when it was. Years ago. I wish it said 2009. And I'd always done a morning practice, and I'm pretty good at finding a little space in the mornings and had a couple mantras. But this one, as soon as I did it, it's one of those things on the spiritual path that just like sticks. You know, you guys know what I'm talking about. You do a certain thing, you'll do a certain practice, just like it just hits and it's good. And this is whatever it is for you, but particularly as we talk about life and meeting purpose, meeting your business, and everything we've been talking about today. I suggest something like this that just says, you know, before my feet hit the ground, or just in those first few moments of the day, let me do something that really aligns what wants to come through me. Because so many times we're trying to figure out, right? Like we're trying to think through what wants to happen today. And I'm it, right? This is a big part of my life. What wants to happen? What do I want to do? How's it going to turn out? And I'm like, am I going to make money? Am I going to make sure my family's fed? And then it's boom, cortisol response. Where'd she go? Like, there's a lot happening there. And so if we can bring it in, ground it out, first thing in the morning, and this one for me has been transformative. And so maybe we can just do it together. I'll say it. You can watch it. Maybe we do it once together, and then I'll do it once, and then you guys can do it with me a second time. But the way it works for me is before my feet hit the ground, literally don't let them touch the ground. And it's just taking that, drawing in that energy that wants to start move through me for that day, and just say, okay, I'm here. And I'm going to open to receive. Karagre vasate Lakshmi, Kara madhye Saraswati, Kara mule stitagari, Prabhate Kara darshanan. And as that energy builds in your hands, you just see it kind of as a crystal ball release into that day. That's at the end of the day, that's all you can really do, right? Just let it go. Don't hold on. Don't try to grab it all day long. So if you guys are open to it, let's do it together. Let's just pull in that energy. Let's bring it down through our head, into our heart, through our belly, which is really our dantian, our power spot. And then we'll say together, if we can, if you guys want to peek at the screen. Karagre vasate Lakshmi, Kara madhye Saraswati, Kara mule stitagari, Prabhate Kara darshanan. See that crystal ball forming there with all of that good intention, all of your passion and purpose building in it. And then just almost with a breath, we let it go into the day. And then I feel like from there, you can hit the ground running. And it starts fast, right? And so we get through the craziness of the day. Sometimes we barely survive. The cortisol is going all over the place. And I also feel like it's important to ground it out at the end of the day. Just to see, okay, I did my best, right? And I'm just going to take that down a whole different level into the night and see what wants to happen there. So on the next one, this is an evening mantra. This is Sri Aurobindo's Gayatri, which for me, my whole spiritual life has been an amazing mantra. I don't know if we need to do this one together, but it's an opportunity again at the end of the day. And I know so many of us are meditators, and we're practicing. And I don't want to say to you what you should practice or how you should practice, but there's a lot of other much wiser people in that regard here. But just as it relates to bringing your passion, your purpose through your work in the world. I see it often. I do a lot of mentorship. I work with the university in Boulder. I love helping young kids all the way through people trying to start business whenever in life. Is that this is a challenging space right now, man. I mean, like, we've got the economy doing this, that, and the other, and money's moving differently, and we're all seeking that place that we can really have impact in the world. Oh, and by the way, we need to make money, and we need to bring it in, and we need to take care of our family, and abundance is good. And I think we're all getting there in yoga and spirituality and practice, where it felt like a while ago, like a few years ago, a decade ago, there was a lot of like pushing money and kind of abundance. It was kind of a tricky thing with yoga. But now I feel like we're all really opening up to the possibilities of abundance in new and different ways. And if we can create that through social enterprise and this, I guess, concept of evolutionary leadership, which to me is really doing this together and really creating your projects around teams and people where you can open your heart, you can be transparent, you can share what's blocking you from kind of a karmic, almost samskara way. Throw that all into the fire together. You do this in your business, in your projects. It's vital that we move past those things that are holding us back, individually and collectively, so that we can let that thing that wants to come through shine bright and come through it without all of the problems and the challenges and the linkages that it's had in the past. So going on a little bit about that, but just to say here, I'll just say it, Om Tat Savitur Varam Rupam Jyotihi Parasya Dimahi Yanaha Satyena Dipayat, which I shouldn't have to read after doing that for 10 years, but I guess I'm kind of anything like that really, and this mantra is about transformation. So it's just one of those ancient ones that just hits you deep on that place of how am I transforming? What did I do today, and how am I continuing to transform, bring through my gifts, shine my highest light, both for myself, both for my soul's path, as well as those around me in the world. So I hope this talk has inspired you to bring all of your gifts through all that you do in your work in the world, and that you can illume yourself and all of us with that. Thank you.